our sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' ethical teaching from Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And today our passage is from the beginning of chapter 6. Beware of practicing your piety before men in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give alms, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by men. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by men. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And in praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. And when you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by men. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. May the Lord bless to our hearts and our minds this reading of his word. So we have in this teaching of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' ethical explanation as to how the new community is supposed to live. This group of people called the Way, the disciples, the followers. And in doing so, he's trying to create a kingdom which breaks down the existing social barriers of the time, so that for the first time in history, men and women could actually sit next to each other and worship in the early church. Slaves and slave owners could sit next to each other and worship in the church. People of all different ethnic groups, colors, races were coming together. And so this new community became a place that was very different than any other place in that society, and Jesus gives them a lot of advice as to how to live, what they're supposed to be doing. And in this particular section, he's talking about how people should not spend all of their energy trying to look good, trying to be impressive to other people. Billy Crystal used to be on Saturday Night Live, and he had a character that he would do that was this smarmy kind of a talk show host guy like a Fernando Lamas, and he would have the guest on and he would say, "Remember, it's not how you feel, it's how you look. And you look marvelous." Jesus is saying, it's not how you look. That's not what it's about. That's not what religion is supposed to be about. It's something different. It's something interior. Now, I don't blame you for being confused, because 2 weeks ago, when we started the series, we read Matthew 5, the earlier chapter, where Jesus said, "Let your light shine to the world, that your good works will be seen and known by men." No one lights a candle and puts it under a bushel, but on a light stand so that everybody can see. So on the one hand, Jesus says to let your good works be seen by everybody, and it'll inspire them to do good works too. On the other hand, don't let your good works be seen because you don't want to get credit for looking good. The credit should come from God. And so it almost has to do with the motive behind the works. It's very clear that if you have a bad motive, even though you do a good work, you don't have a moral good. And so the motives behind what we're doing is very, very important. Jesus is saying, don't blow your own horn. There was a guy on Telegraph one day in Berkeley, and he had a megaphone kind of thing, and he was reading the Bible on the corner there. Big, loud, thing, reading the Bible. I wonder what would happen when he came to this passage there, standing on the street corner in Berkeley. If he just skipped right over this thing about doing it in secret and privately. Interesting. Jesus says, don't do anything just to look religious, to look good. Now, I have to say, it might be that because of where we live and the time we live in, this may not be as relevant to us as other places. I mean, if there's other times and other societies where you live where people really value being religious, then you can look good by going to church, right? But I don't think that works that way here in the Bay Area in this time. And in fact, you're driving past 75% of your neighbors who don't go to church on Sunday morning, who think that going to church makes you, frankly, a little weird. They know that on Sunday morning you're supposed to go to Pete's Coffee and read the New York Times, or you're supposed to be on a bike, trip or a hike or something. So it may not be. I don't think that anybody here gets social credit by coming to church on a Sunday morning, and that may be a good thing because Jesus says that's not why you're supposed to do it. So when do you speak up? When do you shut up? It all has to do with the motives. What Jesus is irritated is externalized religion. The Pharisees had this intricate religious way of living their life. They had to wash 7 times. There were all these purification rituals. There were, of course, all the rules about which food you could or couldn't eat. All this sort of externalized religion. And Jesus looked at that and he said, you know what he called them? He said, you guys are whitewashed tombs. You look beautiful on the outside. You're gleaming. But in the inside, there is rottenness and death. You are whitewashed tombs. He says religion is an inside job. And then he goes on to talk about secrets, about giving, and about praying. We'll look at them all 3 very briefly. Did you hear how many times that word secret kept coming up there? God who sees in secret will reward you. There are several reasons to keep secrets. Jesus wants his disciples to experience the acts of goodness for their own sake, free from public appearance. He doesn't want us to be like the man who never did a good deed without issuing a press release. That's not what we're supposed to do. Jesus knows the power of the secret self. He talked in the Beatitudes about this interior life that we're supposed to have. He said that you're blessed if you're poor in spirit, if you're meek, if you mourn, if you hunger and thirst for righteousness. These are all interior qualities which have to do with our way of life. And the great saints of all times, whether it's Mother Teresa or Albert Schweitzer, it's always from their interior life that their exterior acts of service evolve from. It's from that quiet time, that time alone with God and in prayer. There was a really interesting book that came out in the 70s by a Swiss doctor named Paul Tournier. He did a lot of counseling. He was also a therapist. He was a Christian, and he wrote a book called Secrets. And he said this. He said, a secret is that which makes you an individual apart from your tribe. Having a secret is what begins the process of being an individual. To respect secrecy is to respect individuality. A child becomes an individual the day they announce to their parent, I have a secret. He told about a little girl who would walk home from school with her mother every day. Her mom would go and pick her up, and they would walk down the same street, always this one side of the street. They would look in the shop windows. And as she got older, her mom didn't always meet her at school. Sometimes she walked home by herself. But one day, she walked down the other side of the street. And when she got home, she didn't tell her mother. She had a secret. She had a secret. So, therefore, in keeping a secret, it's the first step of becoming an individual. Telling a secret to a freely chosen confidant is the second step in being an individual. For the one who cannot keep a secret is not free, but the one who can never reveal it is not free either. We have to understand that part of our life with God is to be in secret, to be in quiet, something that we do not speak about. And then Jesus talks about giving. He says how not to give. Don't do it like the Pharisees. He's primarily interested, once again, in motives, not in actions. He uses the word hypocrite for them, which in the Greek of that day actually just meant actor. A hypocrite was an actor. He said they were acting out a role. He talked about how they would give. In those days, in the temple, in the courtyard, they had big metal coffers, and they would go down to a chest where the money was kept. And the practice was to take your money and change it into small coins, get a nice big bag of pennies. And then you could wait till the busiest time of day when there's a lot of people in the courtyard, and then take your bag of coins from real high like this and then shake them into the middle coffer so it makes all kinds of noise, and then on top of it bring a trumpeter. So some of them actually brought trumpeters to get attention. And so their whole purpose of their giving was to get attention from other people and to be seen as being these wonderful, generous people. Jesus says, whatever you do in your giving, don't give like that. A good act done from a wrong motive does not yield a moral good. It's fine to be recognized for your generosity as long as that's not the reason that you give. It's okay to be recognized as long as the reason that you're giving is not to be recognized. Church for centuries has always recognized their benefactors, whether it's a plaque or a stained glass window or a statue. But hopefully the reason that they gave was not to get the recognition, but to serve God. Charles Lamb, the philosopher, once said, "The greatest pleasure I know is to do a good action by stealth and have it found out by accident." Have it found out by accident. And then he talks about praying. Many years ago, Scott Fitzgerald, one of our choir members, sent me a story about praying that he came across on the internet. And it was about this little town in the South, and this man wanted to start a bar. And people in this little town did not like that, especially the Baptist church was against the idea of having a bar in this town. And so they had a petition that they sent around. They had a prayer rally where they got everybody to pray that the bar wouldn't be able to open. They got everybody up in arms about it, praying. And sure enough, the week before the bar was supposed to open, it was struck by lightning and burned down. The bar owner, who was an atheist, sued the church for loss of property that their prayers had caused. The church said, "We had nothing to do with it. We didn't do anything. It's not our fault." And so the judge, in going over the paperwork, said, "It appears from the paperwork here that we have a bar owner who believes in the power of prayer and a Baptist church that doesn't." Jesus says, whatever you do when you pray, don't try to show off. It's not about showing off. It's about being quiet. I love the translation that Eugene Peterson gives in the Message for this verse. He says, "Find a quiet, secluded place. Just be there as simply and as honestly as you can manage, and the focus will shift from you to God." That's the type of prayer Jesus recommends. The quietness, to let the focus shift from you and your needs to God. Jesus says, pray and give in secret, but also let your light shine so that other people can see the way as well. Not all Jews acted the way the Pharisees did. In fact, there's a story that comes out of the Hasidic tradition about a rabbi who was so holy that it was rumored that on Sabbath afternoons, he ascended into heaven to personally commune with God. One day, a couple of the boys from his synagogue decided to follow the rabbi and see whether he did or not. And what they saw was that the rabbi spent the afternoon going to the homes of the elderly and the sick people. He cooked meals for old ladies, cleaned the houses of old men. The next Sabbath, some of the other men asked the boys, what did they see when they followed the rabbi? Did he ascend into heaven? And they said, oh no, he went much higher than that. Much higher than that. May we, as we seek to follow our Lord Jesus Christ, learn how to do in secret and in public those things that he calls us to. Amen.